Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about writer's biases. For those who don't know, a writer's bias is an unconscious or conscious preference, prejudice, or perspective that writers bring into that work, whether that be shows, movies, books, scripts, theater, whatever. And these biases can stem from various factors like cultural background, personal experiences, societal influences, and individual beliefs. These writers' biases can impact the characters, storylines, and themes we see within the books and movies we experience. It can influence how diverse identities are represented. It can sometimes perpetuate stereotypes, marginalize certain groups, and present a skewed version of reality. And there's so many other ways in which writer's bias can present itself, both obvious and not as obvious. Some of the more obvious ones is you can kind of see in how characters' personalities, motivation, and arcs present themselves. Like if you're watching a character and they say something and it's leaning towards this, then obviously you know that character is fictional. So that mentality behind what's being said is coming directly from the creator source, the author, the writer, whatever. The reason why writer's bias can be problematic, for lack of a better word, is because it can reinforce some pretty negative things. When writer's bias is positive, I mean, it's positive, so there's no really way to be like, oh, this is a bad thing. But when writer's bias is negatively reinforced, like it's promoting something harmful or hateful, that's when I find issue with it. There's a way about it, person, on the fact that I will always say that we receive the media we consume, whether you like to believe it or not. When you watch something, when you read something, whether you want to or not, whatever messages, themes, whatever's being promoted, you will internalize it in one shape, or another. And it's hard to kind of block that out when you're unaware of it. Not to mention, like when it's negative, it can promote harmful narratives. It can downplay experiences and struggles of marginalized groups. It can make fun of those groups. It's so many implications when writer's bias is negatively reinforced. A big example of this I want to talk about is Sam Levinson. I'm definitely making a video in the future about my issues with Euphoria, and Sam Levinson, the biases he has is one of those components of why I want to talk about Euphoria, but like focusing on this video, the reason Sam Levinson is a great example because you can see in his shows like The Idol and Euphoria and Malcolm and Marie, kind of how he views women. It's hard to explain, but like I can see the bias he has towards women and their struggles based off of how he writes his female characters. Rue, what was the girl in the Idol? I didn't watch the show, but you know the girl from The Idol, how he uplifts the narrative of kind of putting women through the ringer leads to women becoming empowered and stronger, or the other narratives he has in his work where it's like men are oftentimes victimized by women, and a lot of his stuff has an undertone of misandry, which I'm I, I really don't want to get into that, but he's a great example of that. What's the dude? Something that Greer Sacasa, the dude over Riverdale, and Sabrina. He's another example of when biases show through the work. Well, both of theirs I feel really icky about because it's something about it that feels unsafe. I do not feel safe. I probably wouldn't feel safe working in that environment with them because of the biases that present themselves in their work. Whether you believe it or not, or want to argue or not, I mean, I choose peace always, and I do not feel peaceful with the work they produce at all whatsoever. But here are some ways to kind of recognize and address biases in order to create a more authentic, inclusive, safe storytelling. I know people watching this, all five of you are probably like, safe, why would you want safe storytelling? But it's just like you want to make sure that you're not antagonizing an underrepresented group or people with your work intentionally or unintentionally, because I feel like writers' biases are a reflector on the writer. And so I think you shouldn't really reinforce negative stereotypes. You shouldn't really reinforce anything of that nature. But here's some ways to kind of counteract that or make sure you're not letting your bias show, because you can have biases, but when they present themselves in your work, that's kind of a different thing to tackle. So self-reflection and awareness, like if you are aware you feel this way about a certain group, or you're aware that you have these type of thoughts towards a ideology or anything of that nature, then really sit back and reflect, especially if you're making a story about those people. Like oftentimes I see writers negatively reinforce writer biases when writers who are outside of that group try to write that group, but they have those biases and those biases present themselves in really harmful ways. I don't even know how to describe it. You're trying to write a character of that group and you end up being hateful because of the bias that you have, whether known or unknown. And to really self-reflect to understand why you feel that way. And if it's coming from a place of bigotry, get some help, maybe. I mean, yeah, get some help. Do research and consult. Because oftentimes people who have those biases are taught and there's been no one to counteract them. So you might not even know that a bias that you have or an opinion or perspective you have about something or someone is harmful until you talk to that something or someone that experiences life within that group, Get diverse perspectives, do research. I feel like everyone who creates a work of any sort, whether it's book, movie, art, whatever, music, should really try to understand what they're putting out, because you don't want to put something out and then it end up being misconstrued because you didn't do your due diligence. Also, with getting consultations to prevent biases, you should also have sensitivity readers and editors. I'm like to read and I'm oftentimes on Book Talk. I think I started my TikTok talking about books, but now I just kind of talk about life, or it's kind of a way they expel emotions. But oftentimes I see the conversation, especially on like the Black readers on Book Talk, about having sensitivity readers and editors, because things can go through the works, and not if no one who understands how things can be perceived negatively is looking at it, then it's going to go all the way through to the end with no one batting an eye at presenting marginalized groups in a negative way. And I feel like writers should be able to get critical feedback to their work. Like sometimes you just got to understand that even though you don't think there's an issue with your work, others can see issue with your work, and to work on a way to prevent anyone from being misrepresented or harmed by the work you produce. And if you do intend to harm others with the work you do, then that's a whole separate conversation. And self-work again. There needs to be a balance between artistic freedom and responsibility. I think writers, producers, creatives in general have the right to artistically express themselves in whatever way they want to. No one's going to stop them from doing so. But I think as creatives, because I guess I'm a creative, have the responsibility to ensure how we impact our viewers or readers or whoever's receiving our work. It isn't done in a negative way, essentially. Also, I wrote a YouTube video on impact versus intent. So you can watch that video on my YouTube channel that's been released. We need to take responsibility for the impact our work produces. Writer's bias can have both positive and negative outputs. Positive ones, it's like they're positive, so who cares? But like the negative ones, we need to make sure that we're not reinforcing and pushing out, because people will receive that whether we want them to or not, or whether they know themselves whether they want to or not. So it's important that we understand that those biases can show in the work we produce. I probably have biases all over the work I produce, whether that's on my TikTok, follow me at Your Average Drum Reader. Is that a shameful plug? I don't care. YouTube, Instagram, whatever. It's like I probably have biases that present themselves. I don't want them to cause harm. It's not my intention. But if it's my impact, then let me know, because I will do the work in order to ensure that that doesn't happen. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to my channel. Let me know what y'all think. Does writer's bias, is it obvious or is it more subtle? Do you think that it needs to be addressed when it's done in a harmful way, or do you think that that's on the writer, the creative, to do so? I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation that I would love to have with anyone, really. I love talking about books and movies. So I hope y'all have a lovely day.